My son didn't even bother to call. The message flashed across my screen at 7:42 on a Tuesday morning, right as I was pouring coffee. Mom, don't come to the wedding. Chloe doesn't feel safe around you. Please respect that. No emojis. No, love you. Just those 3 sentences, stacked like gunshots. For a second, I thought it was a prank. Lucas and I had never been that kind of family. After his father died when he was 11, we'd survived on bad jokes and late-night takeout, on honest conversations about everything from grief to his first crush. It's you and me. Kid. I used to whisper to him when the house felt too big and too empty. Apparently, you and me had an expiration date. My first instinct was to call him. My thumb hovered over his name in my contacts. Then I noticed something. The small, grey line under his text. Read 7:42 a.m. He was watching. Waiting to see what I would do. I set the phone down and stared at the kitchen counter. A streak of coffee had pooled near the handle of my mug. My hand was trembling just enough to slosh it over the rim. Outside, Denver was waking up distant traffic. A dog barking 2 houses down, the neighbor's sprinkler hissing to life. Ordinary sounds, completely out of place in that moment. Chloe doesn't feel safe around you. The last time I'd seen her, 3 weeks earlier, she'd been perched on my sofa like a cat in a designer tracksuit, explaining to me in slow, patient tones why a traditional wedding wasn't aligned with their brand. I'd bitten my tongue. I'd smiled. I'd even offered to help with logistics, since I'd managed books for a logistics company for 20 years and could plan complex operations in my sleep. She'd said she appreciated it. Apparently, that appreciation lasted exactly until she learned she couldn't count on my retirement savings as her personal ATM. I picked up my phone again, but not to call Lucas. Instead, I opened my brokerage app. For years, decades, really, I'd been quietly putting away every spare dollar into a future fund. It wasn't in Lucas's name, not legally, but in my head. It had always been his bridge to a better start. A down payment someday. Seed money for a business if he wanted it. A cushion I never had. I stared at the balance. It represented double shifts, skipped vacations, worn-out shoes I'd told myself could last 1 more year. It represented every time I'd told Lucas, "Don't worry about the money, honey. Focus on school." My son had just told me not to come to his wedding because his fiancée didn't feel safe. I moved my finger and started a transfer. By the time I logged out, I'd done something my son would never forgive. At least, not right away. But that wasn't even the biggest shock waiting for me. The next morning, my doorbell rang. Lucas stood there, and he didn't come alone. If you'd asked me a year earlier whether I could ever imagine my son telling me to stay away from his wedding, I would have laughed. Back then, it was still just Lucas and me against the world. I was 29 when my husband Daniel didn't come home from his night shift. Heart attack, they said. One moment he was hauling freight in a warehouse on the edge of town, the next he was gone. We had a mortgage, a rusting sedan, and a boy who still slept with the hallway light on. I went back to work 2 weeks after the funeral. Daytimes, I handled accounts for a logistics firm, spreadsheets, ledgers, long calls with impatient vendors. Nights, I took freelance bookkeeping gigs for anyone who'd pay. A dentist's office, a tiny landscaping company, a friend's cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but numbers made sense when nothing else did. If you added them right, they behaved. I built a life measured in invoices and lunchbox notes. Lucas grew up in break rooms and library corners, doing homework under fluorescent lights while I reconciled month-end statements. We didn't have much, but he never missed a field trip, never went hungry, never heard me complain about the extra shifts. When he got into a good state university on a partial scholarship, we opened a small joint account so I could teach him how to manage money, just a starter, with me as the primary holder. I co-signed his first credit card when he was 21, a modest limit with strict rules. He rolled his eyes, but he listened. At least, he used to. We had Sunday dinners, even after he moved out. He'd bring pasta. I'd provide sauce and stories. He called me Len, the way his dad used to, and teased me about my outdated phone and my refusal to use more than 2 streaming services. Then he met Chloe. He described her as driven and visionary the first time he mentioned her, a wellness coach who was killing it on social media and crushing it in crypto. I remember thinking those verbs sounded more like violence than success, but I kept that observation to myself. At our first dinner together, I noticed small things. The way she answered questions meant for him, how she corrected him on details of his own childhood. No, Lucas, you told me your mum worked at some small office, not that she managed a whole department. The way she glanced, almost reflexively, at his phone whenever it buzzed. I brushed it off. New relationships are awkward, I told myself. I didn't want to be the stereotypical, jealous mum, but the pattern continued. Weekly calls turned into hurried texts. Sunday dinners were suddenly too much, with Chloe's content schedule. When I asked about Thanksgiving, he mumbled something about starting our own traditions and, you understand, right? I tried to. I really did. Then the engagement was announced via a group email with a link to their joint website. No call, no visit, just a glossy landing page with professional photos and a countdown timer to L&C Day. The ring must have cost more than his car. That's when the knots in my stomach stopped feeling like random anxiety and started feeling like a warning. The text banning me from the wedding was the spark. But the fire had been smouldering for months, and now that it was burning, I'd just poured gasoline on it by moving his would-be house money out of reach. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. When I opened the door, Lucas was on my porch, jaw tight, eyes wary. Beside him, Chloe stood with her arms folded, scanning my house like she was appraising something she already owned. "Mom," Lucas said, "we need to talk. Now." He had no idea I was about to draw a line that would change everything between us. "Let me take you back to that moment on my front porch." Lucas wouldn't meet my eyes. Chloe stared straight into my house like she was checking inventory. Furniture, art, square footage. I'd seen auditors with a softer gaze. "Come in," I said. They walked past me without a word, straight into my living room. Chloe sat first, taking the center of the couch. Lucas remained standing, hands in his pockets, like a teenager again. "Mum, what did you do?" he asked. I played dumb. "About what, honey?" "The money," Chloe cut in. "The investment account. The one you told Lucas you were setting aside for his future. It's gone." So that was it. No pretense. No warm-up. We weren't here about hurt feelings. We were here about cash. "I didn't tell Lucas I was setting aside an account for him," I said slowly. "I told him I was saving. I never put anything in his name. That account has always belonged to me." "That's not what he thought," she snapped. "You said you'd help with a house. We've been planning around that. Now the balance is 0. I glanced at Lucas. "Did you tell her the login details for my brokerage?" He flinched. I logged in on her laptop once. For the house estimate. I didn't think—" "Exactly," Chloe said. "You didn't think your own mother would yank it away out of spite right before our wedding?" Spite. That word sat in the room like smoke. "Lucas," I said, keeping my voice level, "have I ever promised, in writing, that that account was yours? Have you ever signed anything? Seen your name on it?" He hesitated. "No, but you always called it the future fund. My future. I called it our safety net," I corrected gently. "Mine and yours. For emergencies. For real opportunities. Not for a rushed wedding you announced by email." Chloe leaned forward. "Are you saying our wedding isn't a real opportunity to you?" "I'm saying," I replied, "that I'm not comfortable funding it. especially when I've been explicitly uninvited. Her eyes flashed. That text was about boundaries. You're controlling. You're making everything about you. Lucas is finally building his own life, and you're punishing him. There it was. The script. I'd heard versions of it in HR disputes, in messy divorces I'd helped untangle on paper. The words controlling and toxic got thrown around a lot when money was involved. I looked at my son. Is that how you feel, Lucas? That I'm punishing you? He shifted his weight, eyes fixed on the carpet. I just, I don't want fighting. Chloe feels like you don't respect her. Respect. I thought of all the little slights I'd swallowed. The jokes about my boomer mindset. The way she'd rolled her eyes when I asked basic questions about her business. I had bent myself into knots, trying not to be that mom. And where had it gotten me? Banned from my own son's wedding and on trial in my own living room. I'm not going to argue with you, I said finally. The account is mine. I've moved it. And from now on, I'm removing myself from anything that ties my finances to yours. Not because I don't love you, but because it's safer for everyone. Wait, what does that mean? Lucas asked, alarm creeping in. It means, I answered, no more co-signing. No more open doors. Someone else could walk through. Chloe's expression hardened. You'll regret this, Margaret. Maybe I would, but not in the way she thought. They left in a huff, Chloe first, heels clicking like a metronome of anger, Lucas trailing behind, torn in half. When the door shut, the house went quiet. Too quiet. I stood in that silence and did something bankers are trained to do. I started a file on my own son's fiancée, because if this was only about love, why did she look like someone who'd just watched her lottery ticket burn? If you're listening to this thinking, maybe Chloe was just stressed, maybe she overreacted, I understand. I wanted to think that too, but numbers don't care about stress. They tell you what's really happening. That night, I did what I've done my entire adult life when something feels wrong. I opened my laptop and started digging. I pulled up the old joint account Lucas and I had used back in college, technically still open, though we hadn't touched it much in years. I'd left a couple $100 in there as a backup for him, nothing life-changing, but enough that we'd both get a notification if something odd happened. The balance was $43. I checked the transaction history. Small, random purchases over the last few months. A subscription to a crypto trading platform I'd never heard of. A wellness retreat ticket. Food delivery from places nowhere near Lucas's apartment. Some entries had memos. Business expense. C. Reimbursement later. My stomach sank. I logged into the credit monitoring service I'd insisted we set up when I co-signed his first card. I hadn't checked it in months. The dashboard spun, then loaded a neat little list of recent activity. 2 new credit inquiries in the last 90 days. Both from online lenders I didn't recognize. One marked personal loan. One marked line of credit. I clicked the details. Applicant: Lucas R. Carter. Contact email? Not my son's. A throwaway address I'd seen on one of Chloe's business flyers. Phone number? Hers. I took a deep breath and opened my own email. Buried in the clutter of promotions and newsletters was a message from my bank I'd half ignored that morning. Unusual login attempt detected. I clicked. Dear Elena, we detected multiple failed login attempts on your profile from a new device. Location: Denver. Downtown. The timestamp? 10 minutes after Lucas's "Don't come to the wedding" text. I called the bank's fraud line. A young man with a calm voice walked me through recent access logs. Someone had tried to get into my old linked accounts, one of them that small joint account, using the right username but messing up the password. After 3 tries, the system had locked it and flagged the activity. Do you have any reason to believe someone close to you might have your login details? He asked. I pictured Lucas, casual on a couch, typing in my credentials once on Chloe's laptop. Yes, I said. I do. We set up extra verification, new passwords, two-factor authentication. I hung up and stared at the screen, heart pounding. Let's be clear. I didn't want to believe my son was trying to steal from me. And deep down, I didn't. That downtown IP address? Lucas worked in tech but lived in a quiet suburb. Chloe, on the other hand, filmed half her videos in a sleek high-rise, downtown. I opened a blank document and titled it, Protecting Lucas. Underneath, I wrote, Joint account drained slowly. New credit pulls with Chloe's email. Fraud alert from bank. Downtown IP. Wedding text. Immediate login attempts. The pattern was starting to emerge. Ugly and undeniable. I'd spent decades trusting numbers to tell the truth. Now, they were telling me my son was in serious danger, and the threat wasn't theoretical. It had a perfect manicure and a wellness brand. But if I was going to intervene without blowing up his life completely, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. And that meant bringing in someone I never thought I'd hire for my own family. Here's something no one tells you about getting older. At some point, you become the only adult in the room, even when everyone else insists they're grown. The day after I discovered those credit pulls, I sat in a quiet office on the 12th floor of a downtown building, clasping a paper cup of terrible coffee. Across from me sat Nora Patel, estate attorney. I'd met her once before, years ago, when I updated my will after Lucas turned 18. Back then, it was simple. Everything goes to my son. Now? Not so simple. Nora listened without interrupting as I laid out the last few months. The distancing, the engagement announcement by email, the text disinviting me from the wedding, the showdown over the investment account, the drained joint account, the login attempts. I slid my laptop across the desk, showing her the credit pulls and the bank alert. When I finished, she leaned back, hands steepled. Elena, what exactly do you want to accomplish? I want to protect what I've built, I said. And I want to protect my son from being financially wiped out by someone who... She nodded slowly. Okay, on the asset side, we can do a lot. Right now, your will leaves everything to Lucas outright, correct? Yes, we can restructure that. Create a trust that holds your assets. Name Lucas the beneficiary, but keep everything as his separate property, not marital. That means if he marries Chloe and it goes badly, she has no legal claim on your estate. I exhaled. Do it. There's more, she continued. We can put conditions on distributions, not to control him, but to slow down how quickly he can access large sums. Milestones, purposes, house, education, medical needs, that sort of thing. It makes it harder for someone to pressure him into, say, handing over a lump sum for a business opportunity. It felt cold, talking about my only child like he was a risk factor. But I nodded. I understand. Then she leveled her gaze at me. As for Chloe's behavior, this goes beyond being a bad influence. Those credit inquiries and login attempts could be fraud. But from a legal standpoint, it's tricky. Lucas is an adult. If he willingly shared his information, it muddies the water. I know, I said. I'm not trying to get her arrested. I just want him to see what she's doing. Nora hesitated, then said, You might consider hiring a private investigator, not to spy on your son, but to build a clear picture of her financial history, patterns, previous lawsuits, debts. You need facts, not just feelings, if you're going to confront him. The idea made my stomach twist. That feels invasive. So is someone trying to pry open your accounts, she said gently. You're not doing this for curiosity. You're doing it for protection, yours and his. Silence settled between us. In the hallway, I could hear muffled footsteps, the hum of a copier. Ordinary office sounds, framing an extraordinary decision. Nora slid a card across the desk. This is Jordan Reyes, former financial crimes investigator, now private. He's discreet. You're not the first parent who's come to me with this kind of situation. That last sentence hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't special. I was part of a sad, growing club. I took the card. My hand shook a little. "I'll call him," I said. And just like that, I crossed a line from hurt mother to active defender. Because I signed the retainer with shaking hands, knowing I was paying someone to possibly destroy my son's illusions and maybe our relationship. If you're still with me, you might be thinking, maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe Chloe just has some debt. Everyone does these days. That's what I told myself walking into Jordan Reyes's office. He looked more like a schoolteacher than a former financial crimes investigator, early 40s. Wire-rimmed glasses, dress shirt rolled up at the sleeves. His office was small, but neat, walls lined with binders instead of diplomas. The only decoration was a framed quote, "Trust, but verify." He got straight to it. "You said time is an issue. With the wedding coming up," he began. "So I prioritized anything that could impact your son financially in the short term. I'll give you the broad strokes first, then the details." He laid a thin stack of papers on the table between us. Not a thick dossier. Somehow, that made it more ominous. "Chloe Harper," he said. 25, self-described wellness entrepreneur and crypto educator. No formal business licenses under her name, but several short-lived LLCs associated with her email addresses. Here's the first big thing. He slid over a credit report. Roughly $38,000 in revolving credit card debt. Mostly accumulated over the last 2 years. High-interest store cards, buy now, pay later accounts. She's maxed out on at least 4 cards. My throat tightened. "Does Lucas know?" "Hard to say," he replied. "But if he does, he's not listed as an authorized user on any of these. That's the good news. The bad news is that she's already used his name elsewhere." He placed a second document in front of me. "This is a lease agreement for a small crypto mining operation, industrial space outside the city, racks of machines, that kind of thing. It failed 6 months in. The landlord is still trying to collect on equipment damage." I scanned down the page. There it was, in black and white. Guarantor, Lucas R. Carter. I've never heard of this," I whispered. "He never mentioned it." "The signature doesn't quite match the sample from his bank records," Jordan said. "It's close, but off. The contact email and phone on the application are Chloe's. My educated guess? She filled this out. Maybe he signed something she put in front of him without reading. Maybe she signed for him. Hard to prove either way." I felt like the room was tilting. He continued. "There are also 2 online loan applications in his name. Both declined, fortunately. Same pattern. Her contact details, her devices. One for 25,000, one for 15. Labeled business expansion and wedding expenses." I pressed my fingers to my temples. "So she's already trying to build a life on his credit, and when that fails, she comes after mine." "Patterns," Jordan said quietly. "That's what I look for. And here's the pattern that worries me most." He pulled out a short printout. A screenshot from a legal database. 2 years ago, a man named Trevor Nolan filed a small claims case against Chloe, different last name, same person, according to the identifiers. He claimed she'd persuaded him to invest in her holistic retreat startup, then drained their joint account and left him with business debts. Case was dropped when he didn't show up to the hearing. "Why wouldn't he show up?" I asked, though I already knew. "Shame," Jordan said. "Fear. Or she negotiated something off the record. It happens a lot." He closed the folder, then opened it again, as if to make sure I saw everything clearly. "Elena, I know this is a lot to process, but you hired me for the truth, and the truth is, your son is engaged to someone with a documented history of financial manipulation. She's already using his identity. If she gets legal access as his wife, this can escalate very quickly." My eyes burned. What would you do if it were your kid?" He paused. "I'd show them. All of it. Calmly. Factually. and I'd be prepared for them to defend the person hurting them, because that's what happens. I nodded, even as my heart fought against it. Jordan's last words stayed with me long after I left his office. He closed the folder, looked me in the eye, and said, "If you do nothing, in a year, your son will have nothing." If you've ever tried to warn someone you love that their partner is dangerous, you know the worst part. You can't make them hear you. After I left Jordan's office, I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just my own breathing and the hum of the tires. On the passenger seat sat that thin file with Chloe's history. It felt heavier than it looked. I knew calling Lucas directly would backfire. By then, any concern from me got rerouted through Chloe's filter and came back labeled jealous or controlling. So I took Nora's advice. We drafted a letter, not a screaming, "Your fiancé is a con artist" email. A calm, formal letter on Nora's law firm letterhead. It laid out, in neutral language, several key facts. Evidence of attempted access to my accounts from devices associated with Chloe. The crypto mining lease with Lucas listed as guarantor. The declined online loans in his name. A warning about potential fraud and the legal risk to him. An offer. Meet with me and Nora, together, to review everything before the wedding, Nora. No accusations, no name-calling. Just, you may not be aware of this. Please protect yourself. We sent it certified mail. Signature required. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was pruning the rosebush by the front walk. Unknown number. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered. "What is wrong with you?" a voice shrieked. "Chloe." She didn't even pretend. "You think you can scare Lucas with your little lawyer tricks, sending defamatory garbage right before our wedding? You're sick, Elena. Obsessed. The letter was for my son," I said. "Did he read it? He doesn't want to hear from you." She snapped. "You're harassing us. I could get a restraining order." "On what grounds?" I asked evenly. "Providing documented information about financial risks to my own child." "You're making things up," she hissed. "You hired some hack to dig up lies. This is elder abuse, you know. Financial intimidation. I've talked to people. I know my rights." "Then put Lucas on the phone," I said. "Let him tell me himself that he doesn't want to see the documents." "He's at work," she shot back. Too quickly. "And he's done with you. We both are." She launched into a rant about boundaries, about cutting out toxic family, about how I was threatening their happiness. But underneath the outrage, I heard something else. Fear, because if the letter hadn't rattled her, she wouldn't be calling me from an unknown number in the middle of the day. Would she? When she finally hung up, the silence on the line felt almost peaceful. I went inside and kept moving. Over the next 24 hours, I signed the updated trust documents Nora prepared, locking my assets behind legal glasses. Contacted the bank about every old joint product and asked to be removed or close it where possible. Called the credit card company about that first card I'd co-signed years ago and started the process of taking my name off use. Placed formal fraud alerts with the major credit bureaus, in case new accounts were attempted. Each call felt like cutting another string one Chloe thought she could pull. By sundown, all the doors she'd imagined wide open had quietly swung shut. That's when my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Lucas, and he wasn't alone. When I opened the door, Lucas stood there, stiff as a board. Chloe was at his side, nails dug into his arm, like she was keeping him from bolting. "We need to talk," he said. His voice sounded rehearsed. "Then come in," I replied. We took the same positions as before. Chloe, in the center of the couch, Lucas half standing, half sitting on the edge of a chair, me in my usual armchair. Except this time, I'd prepared the room. On the coffee table sat Jordan's folder, closed but ready. Chloe made the first move. "You've crossed a line," she announced, chin high. "Sending legal threats? Filing false police reports? This is harassment." "What police report?" Lucas asked, glancing between us. I looked at him. I filed a fraud report about the loan applications in your name, the ones you never told me about. He frowned. What loan applications? Chloe's grip tightened. We talked about funding the wedding, babe, she said quickly. Remember? We looked at options. Your mum is twisting this. We never applied for anything, he said slowly. Yes, we did, I said, keeping my gaze on him. Or rather, someone did. Using your information, with her email and phone number as the contact. I reached for the folder and slid it toward him. Read it. Please. All of it. Then decide who's twisting what. He hesitated. Chloe moved to grab it, but he got there first. As he flipped through the documents, I watched his face change. Confusion, then a flicker of recognition. Shock at the totals. The crypto lease. The declined loans. Chloe's debts. 38,000 in credit card debt, he murmured. Chloe. They're exaggerating, she said. Those numbers are wrong. This is all fabricated. She hired someone to fake this stuff. The credit report is from the major bureau, I said quietly. Jordan can't fake that. Neither can I. Lucas turned a page. This. Lease. I don't remember signing this. You did, Chloe insisted. Don't you remember? At that co-working space? You said you trusted me. That you believed in my vision. I remember talking about maybe doing something, he said slowly. But I don't remember this contract. Or this number. His finger landed on the guarantor amount. Her voice pitched up. Of course you don't. You were stressed that day. Your mother is using your anxiety against you. That's what abusers do, Lucas. They make you doubt your own memory. Enough. My voice came out sharper than I intended. I am not perfect. I'm sure I've made mistakes as a parent. But I did not sign your name on loans. I did not drain your accounts and call it wellness. Chloe rounded on me. You just can't stand that I've helped him grow a spine. You want him dependent on you forever. You need to be the hero. If I wanted him dependent, I said, I wouldn't be locking my money away, where neither of you can touch it. Her mask slipped then. Just a second, but I saw it panic. She recovered fast, tears welling up on cue. Lucas, if you believe her over me, after everything, then I don't even know who you are. Choose. Right now. Her. Or me. The room went very still. My heart pounded. I wanted to scream. Don't do this to him. But I kept my mouth shut. This was his moment. He stared at the folder. At Chloe. At me. I need time, he said finally. This is a lot. No, she snapped. That's not how this works. She's trying to destroy us. You either cut her off now, or we're done. She yanked his arm, pulling him toward the door. He stumbled but didn't resist. On the coffee table, the folder lay open. Pages askew. He didn't look back. They slammed the door behind them. Through the front window, I watched them argue in the driveway, Chloe, gesturing wildly, Lucas standing with his shoulders slumped. Then they got in the car and drove away. He left my house with her hand around his wrist, but he also left something behind that she couldn't control. The facts. The 3 days after that showdown felt like walking through fog. No texts, no calls. No late night. Mom, can we talk? Notifications lighting up my phone. I forced myself not to reach out. Every instinct screamed at me to check on him, to apologize, to explain again. But I knew how that script went. Chloe would intercept. My concern would be spun as obsession. More fuel for her narrative. So I did something that felt almost rebellious. I took care of myself. I went to the library instead of the office on Saturday, sat by a window, and read a trashy mystery novel cover to cover. I cooked a real meal instead of frozen dinners. I watered the plants I'd neglected. I slept more than 5 hours in a row. On day 4, my phone buzzed while I was making tea. Text message. Lucas's name at the top. My heart leaped, then dropped when I read it. This is Chloe. I'm using Lucas's phone. He's decided he doesn't want any contact with you anymore. Stop harassing us, or I'll file for a restraining order and sue you for emotional distress. You're not invited to the wedding. You're not part of his life. Accept it. No, he says. No screenshots of him typing. Just her voice, wearing his name like a mask. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a screenshot, saved it in a new folder labeled Chloe, documentation, and emailed it to Nora and Jordan. Then I set the phone down and walked out to the backyard. The roses I'd planted the year Lucas left for college were in half bloom. I trimmed dead branches and pulled weeds, letting the sun warm the back of my neck. If Chloe thought that threat would send me spiraling, she'd misjudged me. The next move was hers. It didn't take long. 2 days later, an email pinged my inbox. Subject line, Olive Branch. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Dear Elena, it began. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I've been under a lot of stress with wedding planning, and I may have overreacted to some things. Lucas has been very upset about the conflict between us, and it's affecting him deeply. As his mother, I'm sure you don't want to see him suffering. She went on to propose a solution. If I contributed a specific amount to the wedding budget, $28,500 to be exact, she believed, we can move past this unpleasantness. She suggested we meet for coffee, like adults. She also dangled a shiny bait, a prenuptial agreement she was more than willing to sign to prove she wasn't after money. I have nothing to hide, she wrote. I only want him to be happy. The number made me snort. Jordan's report had put her revolving debt around $38,000. After a few minimum payments and fees, that proposed Olive Branch amount would plug most of the hole. I forwarded the email to Nora with a single line. Thoughts? Her reply came quickly. Do not respond. Classic manipulation. She's naming nearly the exact amount she needs to get out of crisis. The prenup offer is there to make you feel safe handing over the cash. I didn't reply to Chloe. Not the email. Not the follow-up DM she sent on Instagram after I blocked her number. Silence, for once, was my friend. But Chloe didn't handle silence well. When the FedEx envelope showed up on my doorstep, thick and urgent looking, I knew she was about to overplay her hand. The FedEx envelope was addressed in Chloe's looping handwriting, big, dramatic letters, like she was signing an autograph for a fan. Inside, I found 3 things. A glossy printout titled Our Financial Future, Lucas and Chloe's Plan. A stapled, legal-looking document labeled Premarital Agreement, Draft. A handwritten note on rose-patterned stationery. Elena, the note began. Since you didn't respond to my email, I wanted to show you that you have nothing to worry about. We met with a financial planner, and as you'll see, Lucas and I are in a great position. We don't actually need your money or interference. She underlined, interference. I'm also enclosing the prenup we discussed. It fully protects Lucas. Anything you leave him stays separate. Our debts stay separate. Everything is fair. I'm trying to extend a hand here. For Lucas's sake, please take it. I sat at my kitchen table and read their plan first. If you've ever seen one of those get-rich-quick sales pages, you've basically seen this document. Charts with soaring lines, based on income Lucas didn't make yet. Assumptions that his salary would double in 3 years. Crypto projections that looked like roller coaster tracks ending in the sky. No mention of Chloe's existing debt. No mention of the crypto lease. No line item for attempted fraud charges or possible lawsuits. Then I opened the prenup draft. At first glance, it looked protective. There were sections about separate property, about no claim on future inheritance, all the buzzwords someone like me would want to see. But as I read closer, I saw the traps. A clause that allowed temporary commingling of separate and marital funds for investment opportunities, with no clear definition. Language that said Lucas's future income from any business ventures during the marriage would be considered joint, even if he did all the work. A line that permitted gifts from his family to be treated as marital property after a certain time. In other words, once she got in, she had a lot of paths to the money. I scanned everything into a PDF and sent it straight to Nora. She called instead of emailing back. "I've seen worse," she said, "but this is creative." She, or whoever helped her, knows just enough legal language to be dangerous. The gifts clause alone could pull in pieces of your estate if you ever gave Lucas anything outside the trust. "So what do we do?" I asked. "We answer with the truth," she said. "A real prenup. One that actually protects him completely. If she's as confident as she claims, she'll have no problem signing it." Over the next 2 days, Nora drafted a clean, airtight agreement. All of my assets and any inheritance to Lucas would remain his separate property, non-marital, forever. No commingling clauses, no gifts become joint loopholes. Spousal support terms were modest but fair, based on their actual incomes. Debts each party brought into the marriage remained solely theirs. Simple. Boring. Honest. While Nora worked, Jordan dug one layer deeper into Chloe's past. He called to say he'd found something new. A man in another state, mid-30s, who'd filed a police report 2 years earlier, alleging that Chloe, under a slightly different business name, had used his information to secure equipment leases and then disappeared, leaving him with the bills. No conviction, no follow-through, just a pattern. "This will never see a courtroom unless your son wants it to," Jordan said. "But it might be enough to show him who he's marrying." I picked up the phone and stared at Lucas's name. "Calling now? Out of the blue? With all this ammo? It would feel like an ambush." So instead, I chose something harder. I sent a simple text. "Lucas, I will meet you anywhere. One time, before the wedding. Just you and me. If you don't want that, I will stay away. That's my promise." An hour ticked by. 2. I started to think he'd blocked me. Then my phone buzzed. "Tomorrow. 7 p.m. The coffee shop by your old office. Chloe doesn't know I'm texting you. Please don't tell her." This time, I wasn't going to back out, and I wouldn't let my son do it either, even if he hated me for dragging everything into the light. The coffee shop near my old office hadn't changed much. Same scratched wooden tables, same humming refrigerator, same barista who used to sneak Lucas extra whipped cream when he was little. He was already there when I walked in. Hoodie up, hands wrapped around a mug, like it could anchor him. For a second, he was 8 again. Feet not touching the floor, waiting for me to get off a late shift. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied. I sat across from him, careful not to crowd. "Thank you for meeting me," he shrugged. "I can't stay long. Chloe thinks I'm with a client." That hurt more than it should have. I slid a slim manila envelope across the table. "This isn't everything," I said. "It's just the things that directly affect you right now. You don't have to decide anything tonight. Just read." He hesitated, then opened it. Inside were copies of the declined loan applications in his name, with Chloe's contact info piece, the crypto mining lease with the guarantor section highlighted, a printout from the police system showing the prior complaint against her round, Nora's clean prenup draft with the protective clauses flagged. He skimmed the first few pages quickly, then slowed down. He read the guarantor section twice. "I never saw this lease," he murmured. "At least, not like this. She brought a stack of papers to my apartment once, said it was vendor stuff for her brand. I signed a couple of pages because I was on a call." He swallowed hard. "Oh my God, this isn't about you being stupid," I said gently. "It's about someone taking advantage of your trust." He flipped to the police report. "He dropped the case," Lucas said. "So maybe it wasn't that bad. Or maybe he was scared. Or embarrassed," I replied. "You're not the first smart man to get pulled into something like this. You won't be the last." He set the papers down and rubbed his face. Chloe said you were jealous, that you couldn't handle me choosing someone else, that you wanted to control everything, even my marriage. I took a breath. Lucas, I want you to have a partner. I want you to be loved. I don't care who you marry as long as you're safe and respected. If you showed up with a jazz musician or a librarian or a circus performer tomorrow and they treated you well, I'd throw confetti. He let out a choked laugh. I'm not doing this to win, I continued. I'm doing this because once you sign that marriage license, her access to your life, your finances, your credit, your future changes. And the pattern she's already showing? It doesn't magically improve with a ring. He stared at the prenup draft Nora had written. She sent me one too, he said. Said her cousin's boyfriend put it together. It didn't look like this. I saw it, I told him. It protected her more than you. This one is boring. Protective. If she truly doesn't care about your money, she should have no problem signing it. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, if I ask her to sign this, she'll lose it. She'll say I don't trust her. I met his gaze. Do you? He didn't answer. Instead, he whispered, Mum, what do I do now? I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You decide what kind of life you want 5 years from now. 10. One where you're constantly putting out fires. Or one where you can breathe. He nodded slowly. Eyes wet. I can't tell you what choice to make, I said. But whatever you choose, I will not bail you out of fraud or fix your credit behind the scenes. Those days are over. Not because I don't love you, but because I do. He flinched, but then he straightened. I get it, he said. I think I've known something was off. I just didn't want to see it. We left the coffee shop with no hugs, no big declarations. Just a quiet, tentative truce. The next morning, I woke up to a short text from him. I'm going to talk to her. Before the wedding. I'll keep you posted. On the day that was supposed to be my son's happiest, nothing went the way Chloe planned. End of part 11. Rehook to part 12. Part 12. The day that was supposed to be a wedding. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for a garden ceremony. Instagram gold. I made coffee and tried not to imagine the details I knew by heart from their website. The arch of flowers, the mason jar cocktails, the carefully curated boho chic dress code at 9:15 a.m. My phone buzzed. It was a photo, not of a tux, not of a bouquet, a screenshot of a text thread between Lucas and Chloe. I won't read the whole thing to you, but here's the gist. At 7 a.m., he'd shown up at her condo with Nora's prenup in a folder. He told her he still wanted to marry her, but not without this agreement signed. He'd frozen the joint wedding account temporarily and paused payment to the venue until they'd sorted out the legal side. Her replies started sweet. Babe, we talked about this. We already have a plan. You don't need some lawyer between us. When he didn't back down, they turned sharp. So you do believe your mother over me? After everything? Wow. He sent her a voice note steady. For once saying, this isn't about my mum. It's about patterns and protection. If you're not after my money, this shouldn't scare you. Her final text before he took the screenshot. If you make me sign this, there is no wedding. Choose. Now. He chose. At 10:03, my phone rang. Lucas. She walked out, he said, voice hollow. She packed a bag and left the dress hanging in the closet. Told her bridesmaids to tell everyone I'd lost my mind. I sat down at the kitchen table. I'm so sorry, honey. He let out a shaky laugh. The venue coordinator called. They wanted to confirm rumors before refunding deposits. Apparently, she'd told them we were rushing the date because of some inheritance deadline from you. Like, you'd cut me off if I wasn't married by 30. Completely made up, I said. There is no deadline. I know that now, he replied. It's just, When someone repeats things enough, you start to, I don't know. I thought maybe there were conditions you hadn't told me about. We sat in silence, each listening to the other breathe. What do you need? Honestly? He swallowed. I need to cancel a honeymoon I didn't really want to go on. Call my boss. Probably talk to a therapist. Figure out how deep this mess goes. And, he added, I was hoping you'd come over. Not to fix it. Just to be here. I grabbed my keys. When I walked into his apartment later, there were flower arrangements stacked by the door, a discarded seating chart on the counter, and a tux jacket draped over a chair. He looked smaller somehow, but also lighter. We spent the afternoon on the phone with airlines and hotels, cancelling flights and reservations. He forwarded me emails from lenders he didn't remember signing up for. Together, we made a list of every account he needed to check, every password to change, every service to call. We weren't mother and child that day so much as two adults triaging a financial wreck. At one point, he paused and said, You were right. I shook my head. That's not the victory you think it is. He smiled weakly. Yeah, I get that. As the sun set, we sat on his small balcony with takeout containers between us. No speeches, no toasts, just two people quietly beginning again. I had protected my savings, yes. But more importantly, we were starting the slow work of protecting his future from here on out. Around 9, my phone buzzed with one more notification, a message request. From an unknown account. No profile picture. When I opened it, my heart rate spiked. Because even though she'd vanished from our lives that morning, Chloe wasn't done yet. The message was short. Thought you should see this. Attached was a screenshot of Chloe's latest social media profile, new handle, new branding, manifesting millions with Chloe. Same face, different color palette. The account that had sent it belonged to someone I didn't know. At Ryan Builds, a second message came through. She's been pitching me on a partnership for a few weeks. Said she has a track record of helping guys level up financially. Today she slipped and mentioned your son by first name. Denver. Tech job. Wedding that blew up because of his mum. He paused, then added, I googled. Found your name. In an old tagged photo on her page she forgot to delete. Found some public court records. Found Jordan Reyes's website. I reached out. He didn't give me details, that's not his style, but he said, Listen to his mother's story if you can ever find it. Then, he sent me this account and said, You might understand. I stared at the screen for a long time. On her new page, Chloe had scrubbed any trace of Lucas. Now she posed with vision boards and candles, promising to help men become provider kings if they trusted her guidance and didn't listen to small-minded people stuck in scarcity. Different script. Same plot. I typed back carefully. I'm sorry you're in her path. I can't share my son's private information, but I can suggest this. Ask her to show you her full credit report. Ask for every contract she wants you to sign, in advance, and have a lawyer look at them. If she refuses or calls you negative, walk away. Fast. A minute later, already walked. Just wanted to say thanks for whatever you went through that made Jordan warn me. Hope your son's okay. I smiled sadly. Lucas was getting there. He'd started therapy. He'd met with a financial counselor to rebuild his credit and confidence. He'd moved to a smaller place he could afford alone, without smoke and mirrors. We saw each other once a week, no pressure, no lectures, just movies, dinners, quiet jokes returning one by one. Our relationship wasn't magically healed. There were scars. There would be for a long time. Trust, once cracked, doesn't snap back into place overnight. But we had something we hadn't had in months. Honesty. He knew now that my money was protected not just from Chloe, but from anyone who might come along thinking, future fund, meant free for all. He knew that if he ever wanted help, he'd have to ask directly, like an adult, and accept no for an answer when that was the answer. and I knew I could love him fiercely without trying to bubble wrap his life. One evening, months later, as we were cleaning up after dinner at my house, he said, "Do you ever regret moving the money?" I wiped my hands on a dish towel. "I regret that I had to," I said. "But not that I did," he nodded. "Me neither. Sometimes people hear this story and say, 'You got lucky. At least he left before the wedding.' Maybe. But it didn't feel like luck when I was closing accounts with trembling hands or listening to him choose her over me in my living room. It felt like loss. Here's what I've learned. Loving your kids doesn't mean funding their every decision. And protecting what you've built isn't selfish. It can be the thing that forces the truth into the light. As for Chloe, last I heard, another man had filed a complaint in another city. Maybe this time it will stick. Maybe it won't. Either way, I sleep at night, knowing this. In a world full of people promising quick fixes and easy money, I chose the slow, painful work of telling the truth. And in the end, that truth didn't just save my bank account, it gave my son his life back.